Live from KSAT 12, the 6 o'clock news starts right now.
And we begin with breaking news. Firefighters at the scene of an apartment fire near TPC Parkway and Evans Road at this hour. The Belle Boulevardy Volunteer Fire Department on the scene. Fire Chief Jerry Belak says the fire started on the second floor, but they're having to bring water to the scene to try and fight the flames. There's a fire hydrant there, but they can't get water out of it. 6 water trucks already emptied on this fire. More help expected. We'll continue to follow this as more details become available.
Well, it's been pretty, but the snow and winter weather have pretty much worn out their welcome in South Texas. The whole state, for that matter. This is what it looked like most of the day around San Antonio. A lot of our viewing area after almost a week of this. So many of us hoping this winter, this is its last stand. Here's Adam Caskey with when we can expect to see the snow end and when will things finally warm up, Caskey?
And what exactly are you doing?
Sorry. I threw y'all off. I was trying to adjust our trans guide thing and it just broke.
Okay.
Oh boy. Now it's in 2 pieces. I apologize.
We need to clean up in the weather department.
Yeah. But after this week, we needed something to laugh about.
Yes, we did.
You're welcome.
Smile about.
I was trying to swing the arm over so I could set my clicker on it. And that's why you were hearing us not being able to control ourselves. Okay, this snow is finally coming to an end. Thanks for the lighter moment, Myra. Thank you. Or should I say you're welcome?
Exactly.
Del Rio finally seeing this snow come to an end. They've had nearly 10 inches of snow during this event. 10 inches, that's pretty significant. It's starting to shrink down. Even in San Antonio, we're starting to see the snow start to get a little narrower and narrower, and I think by about 8 o'clock, it's all going to be wrapped up and out of here. So 8, 9 o'clock, snow ending. Temperatures dropping through the 20s tonight, so those wet roads will likely become icy roads, something to consider for early morning travel even tomorrow. Sunshine tomorrow is going to go a long way. We'll talk about that forecast and even a little hiccup for the weekend forecast, including some icing coming up.
All right, thanks, Adam. Let's take a look at time saver traffic out there right now. I-10 in Frio, you can see a lot of snow still here on parts of the highway. The main lanes, though, they look to be unaffected by this, and thankfully there's not a lot of traffic to speak of.
It doesn't look like the upper deck is necessarily open in some directions, but you can see it's traveling in the other direction where it seems drier. But interesting looking at the roadways around San Antonio at this hour.
As South Texas sees yet another day of ice, snow, power outages, food shortages, some group homes trying to care for the most vulnerable in our community have run out of options.
Ursula Perry shows us how SJR Texas, a home for abused, neglected, and sexually trafficked children, came to the end of their rope, forcing kids and mothers to go back out on the streets, back into the survival mode alone.
So we have been kind of on a wing and a prayer since Sunday.
The fight to stay ahead of the weather taking a turn.
We're cooking with crock pots and one working microwave for 24 kids at that facility. And we're using at the other facility, we're using pool water to flush toilets.
Then this. The drip, drip, drip of final disaster. The New Braunfels facility where 24 children, new moms, plus staff were hunkered down all week had to close.
So all of the wells froze, and so pipes have burst.
A rough situation became a watery, freezing mess, and one that was no longer survivable.
So we evacuated them all to our other location, which again has no running water, and we're using a pool to flush toilets. But we moved them all over, and they're all safe and warm in at one big room right now, sleeping on mattresses.
Not an ideal situation for children and young women who have seen the worst in life in abuse and neglect.
But for some kids in the foster care system, food and water has been a scarcity in their life. And so this is just really, really kind of, we're seeing some very anxious and scared children.
She says the staff packed bags last Sunday and they haven't been home since. They're heroes. If all goes according to plan, they'll get a big delivery truck tomorrow and it'll be full of food and water. Let's hope they do. Ursula Perry, KSAT 12 News.
Glad everybody's safe and sound tonight. Well, power is back for most CPS customers today, but not everyone. Right now, CPS shows 5,500 customers still don't have power. Our Garrett Berger went out to talk with some of the people in Kirby today, where he joins us live. Garrett, we saw CPS Energy crews behind you at 5 o'clock. Why are some people still in the dark, or are they? Do we have hopeful signs of light out there?
We absolutely do, Steve. You can take a look behind me. There are some lights on this side of the street. People we've talked to who say they've been without power since Tuesday morning, now getting a little bit of taste of heat and electricity once again. Now, for a while, a lot of us were without power at times because of a strategy of forced outages to save the state's whole grid from going down. That's since been suspended, which is why 99% of us are now back online. But some areas, like this one in Kirby, had equipment failures that need to be fixed before they could get power again. Now, some residents, as I said, told us that they hadn't had power since Tuesday morning. But we saw CPS crews out here this afternoon working to get things back online. And as you saw, we've seen lights coming back on and a lot of chilly residents taking delight in the sight of those CPS crews.
Mom and I opened the door and we were yelling and screaming and saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. We offered to go get them some coffee. My best friend's husband works for CPS and he's been working nonstop as one of the linemen. And so I know what they're all going through too with their families.
A CPS spokesperson said outages are usually prioritized by sides for getting fixed, but right now it's a combination of both the size of the outage and how long people have been out. As you heard, a couple of people out here without power for longer than 2 days. Now, we still have thousands of people who need to get power again. Crews are working on this, but the CPS CEO, Paula Gold-Williams, told us earlier today that normally, in normal conditions, it would take probably through today to get everybody back online. But because, as you can see, still winter weather out here, including some icy conditions, it could take a while longer. But as soon as it takes, you know that everybody's going to say it's not a minute too soon. Live in Kirby, I'm Garrett Berger, KSAT 12 News.
5 days before the winter storm hit, the ERCOT CEO assured ERCOT, and I quote, "We're ready for the cold temperatures coming our way."
ERCOT, the name of the state's power grid operator that you are all too familiar with now, will face scrutiny next week. That's already been underway, but next week it will be official as members of the Texas legislature get their chance to inspect the role that ERCOT played in those widespread power outages this week. Those outages have impacted millions of Texans, and as our defenders discovered, the massive storm barely received a mention during ERCOT's board meeting just last week. Dylan Collier on the growing evidence that they were not properly prepared.
Thank you, Bill. I feel like I have a virtual gavel here.
That was the voice of ERCOT's Sally Talberg moments after being voted chairperson of the board near the start of its February 9th meeting held virtually.
So as board chair, I have big shoes to fill. I think of large cowboy boots, actually.
Talberg, who according to public records lives in Michigan, made the attempt at humor before giving way to President Bill Magnus. Magnus, under fire much of the week for ERCOT's decision to shed power from the grid early Monday, spent less than 40 seconds during the 2.5-hour meeting talking about the impending storm.
We do have a cold front coming this way. We'll probably see our winter peak later this week or in the very early part of next week.
Magnus, senior staff, and the board instead spent a majority of the time discussing finances and the ongoing ERCOT projects.
I didn't mean to convey unconcern.
Magnus today said while he only briefly discussed the storm with the board members, he feels like the agency communicated well with regulators across the state in the days before the winter blast arrived.
What I said indicated we weren't concerned. I really was just trying to notify the board that this is something we got to keep an eye on because it's coming at us.
And it is safe to assume everything about ERCOT will be dissected in the months ahead, including board members living out of state and some collecting large compensation packages despite only dedicating a handful of hours to the entity each week. Magnus himself, according to ERCOT's 2018 tax filings, was compensated well over $800,000 that year. Dylan Collier, KSAT 12 News.
Take a look outside with live cam today. It would be a beautiful sight in San Antonio if we weren't dealing with all of these other issues at the same time. Snow all day in our area.
2 major snow events in 1 week.
And it's really unprecedented, very unprecedented in terms of having that around here. I mean, 2 big snow events within a week. Visibilities are down a bit, of course, because of the snow that's falling. You look at air temperatures out there, and for the most part, we're at or slightly below freezing in terms of those temperatures. Snow totals were impressive, especially out near Del Rio, 9.7 inches. Even a little bit more in other parts of Val Verde County. So far officially at the airport in town, 2.5 in San Antonio. We'll take a look at the radar estimated snow totals, temperatures, refreeze tonight, and a weekend issue, which really could cause some icing coming up.
The daily briefings from the city and county are returning tonight for the first time since this winter storm hit us a couple of days ago. Though a lot of things have been delayed in terms of COVID testing in our area, so we're not expecting to hear too many details that we normally do about coronavirus cases. But an all-important detail will be included in this briefing that has everything to do with where we are right now.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to talk about the COVID hospitalizations, but they're also going to talk about the power situation and the water situation. So it's going to be, we're expecting Mayor Ron Nuremberg, County Judge Nelson Wolf, and SAW's President and CEO Robert Puente to be part of this discussion. You can see it's up on the screen right now. I don't see oh, there he is. Robert Puente is part of this discussion. Let's go live to this Zoom meeting.
President and CEO of the San Antonio water system. It's been a few days since we've been able to safely bring you this update due to the weather we too have been experiencing. Tonight's briefing is a COVID-19 update and a severe winter weather response update. So let me start with the weather response. The region is still going through a significant weather event. Let's go through some of the updates from the city, then I'll turn it over to Judge Wolf. Road conditions remain icy and very dangerous. The main lanes of 281 North, Loop 410 Northwest, and Highway 151 are closed. Several highway direct connectors are closed as well. Approximately 40 city streets are closed, 60 traffic signals are out, and 18 are flashing. Public Works crews have sprayed sand on 79 bridges to allow them to remain open, so you should avoid travel unless it's absolutely necessary because the weather is calling for a very hard freeze tonight. On to food delivery for some of our more vulnerable residents. The San Antonio Police Department is working with the San Antonio Food Bank to deliver food to the elderly, disabled, and vulnerable residents who lack transportation options to leave their homes. Please call 311 to request assistance if it's needed. Road closures and weather conditions may affect delivery times, just please note that. Now, on to some permitting issues for repairs that I know many folks are worried about, along with some warnings on scams that are already occurring in our community. As you begin to recover from this weather event, a few reminders. Property owners or licensed plumbers do not require a permit for minor emergency repairs on freeze-damaged or leaking water pipes, provided that the new piping doesn't exceed 5 feet in length. A plumbing permit is required if multiple water pipes are broken, generally affecting the entire home plumbing system and plumbing fixtures. Additionally, permits are required for any repairs to gas lines or gas systems. Our permitting is in place to prevent any damage to you or damage to the health and safety of those around you. Where permits are required, the emergency repairs can be completed before the permit is obtained. We're trying to make it as easy and as efficient as possible for us to get these repairs underway. The permit shall be submitted to the Development Services Department on the next business day once all emergency repairs are completed by a licensed plumbing contractor. Please beware of fraudulent, unqualified contractors or those that come from all over the country looking for vulnerable customers. To check if a contractor is registered with the city, please visit sanantonio.gov/DSD. And you can also visit the Texas State Board of Plumbing Examiners. Finally, homeowners should visit their insurance policies for coverage for the cost of repairing pipes. Some policies also reimburse for the cost of spoiled food. And as noted earlier today, during our city council meeting, we will be looking at avenues for providing relief for these repairs as they are going to be very much needed in days to come. Let me turn it over now to Judge Wolf.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just one thing on COVID. As you know, we're in the middle of emergency weather conditions. At the same time, we still are fighting the COVID issue that's been plaguing us for the last year. We did do vaccines on Tuesday and Wednesday. We were not able to do them today or tomorrow, but we're going to come back and work on Saturday. So Saturday we will be open at the Wonderland Mall. Those that have been scheduled and were not able to come will be able to come on Saturday and get their vaccines. We are all working very hard to try to address this issue. We have closed 249 roads and bridges out in the county. We've also assisted TxDOT in a number of closures that they've had to do on the state highway system. We've been de-icing bridges. We've spread something like 151 tons of shed rock to stop the skidding. We're working with our emergency service districts to providing services in those areas. We have booked hotel rooms. We have a warming center at our emergency center. We are now sticking to only having essentials workers come to the county. We've done that over the last several days, and we will do that again tomorrow. The sheriff is out on patrol with all of his people, turning in those dangerous situations, places we should close or we should respond to. So we're trying to do everything we can. The shortage we've got is portable water, and we're asking for help from the federal government and from others to get more water in here and from the private sector. That's where we stand now. We did pass, I want to mention, a gouging emergency order that we issued last night. And any complaints can be turned into our sheriff's department, or I would assume into the police department, or to the attorney general's office. If you see someone or someplace taking advantage of this terrible thing that we're facing with respect to the severe weather we're having. So that's it, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Judge. And also to encourage those repairs to happen, I didn't mention, but permits that are required for repairs are free from development services. So we want to get those underway as effectively as possible. Okay, so let me give you an update on CPS Energy that was relayed to me before I turn it over to Robert Puente. While power is not completely restored across San Antonio and Texas, CPS Energy system has seen significant improvement throughout the day, and the need for statewide outages has been suspended by grid operator ERCOT. More than 6,000 customers just about remain without power currently, which is primarily related to damaged equipment. CPS crews, as you know, are in the field and are continuing to work hard to restore electricity to all customers. Since the cold and wet weather continues, however, all CPS customers, CPS Energy users, are urged to conserve energy to keep the system stable by lowering thermostats to 68 degrees, unplugging all lights and appliances, and closing shades and blinds to reduce heat loss. Again, I can't say this more emphatically enough. The next many hours, the next day or so, are going to be critically important for us to gain stability in the statewide grid. So please conserve energy as best you can and help us all get everybody back up and running. Let me now turn it over to Robert Puente with SAWS before I close out with some more on our COVID response.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I really want to let the community know that I understand what you're going through. I feel what you're going through. There's countless phone calls and emails that are coming in, desperate individuals, desperate families that do not have water. And we know how important water is, the sanitation issue, just the regular use of water. So we hear that. There are certain neighborhoods that are still impacted throughout San Antonio. The main reason for that is the lack of pressure. When we had the brief respite a day ago where temperatures rose above freezing and things started to thaw, we had an idea of what kind of main breaks, not main breaks, but breaks from private businesses and private homes causing the lowering of the water pressure And also that caused the need for a boil water notice. So I want to emphasize that we understand if we're not communicating with you enough, it's because we're working as hard as we can to try to actually deliver the water to you. I am way behind answering texts and phone calls and emails, but we are trying as best we can. So these neighborhoods that don't have water, we are in the process of creating some distribution centers where we will be able to distribute water to people that come to these centers. In conjunction with the city of San Antonio, we are distributing also bottled water to have that available to the individuals that need that kind of help. There's also been a lot of questions about the undue circumstances that we all find ourselves in. Do we have to pay for this water? No, you don't. What the program that we are going to put in place is whatever your bill was before this happened, is we're going to ask you to pay that bill, no matter how much water you may have lost, what may have happened in your particular circumstance. And so we don't want you to have to add the burden onto you to have a huge water bill. So we're doing that. The message I want to give out to those people is that we at SAWS understand what's going on. The calamity that we not understand right now of weather that dips so low and for such an extended period of time. The power outages caused our inability to move the water into neighborhoods. And now that the power is back on, at least we have power. But unfortunately, what's causing is all the leaks that we're finding out throughout the community. We will probably have over 100,000 leaks in people's homes and businesses where water is just coming out. Yesterday, we used more water. We pumped more water than we do on a hot summer day. And that was 3 different days in a row. And people obviously are not drinking that water. They're not using that water to irrigate their lawns. That's water that is being lost because of these breaks. So what are we doing about that? We have teams of SAWS volunteers walking neighborhoods, looking to see if there's running water, helping people understand how to turn off the water at the meter so you can stop that flow. We are making phone calls. We are asking people to phone your neighbors. I think every one of you knows someone who had a broken water pipe, and that's throughout the city. So if you see water coming out of your neighbor's home or in their yard, let them know. We will do everything we can to help these individuals out, but we have to have these leaks taken care of so our pressure builds up so we can eventually lift the boil water notice. There is some hope. The governor has asked all utilities to give him an idea and TCEQ an idea of what regulations we're asking to be lifted under this particular calamity. And we've asked for this boil waters to be lifted. There's a lot of talk going on, and rightly so. TCEQ has to make a decision, and they're doing everything they can, their due diligence, to see whether or not we're able to lift it very much ahead of time under the normal regulations. So, Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to address our public, and hopefully there will be some questions that I can help answer for our customers.
Great. Thank you, Robert. And before we go,
all right, that is SAWS CEO and President Robert Puente that you heard there at the end, giving an update on the water situation in the city of San Antonio. But I think what he said at the beginning is very important. He says, we feel what you're going through. We hear you. We know what is happening and how important water is. He also gave us an idea of the scope of water leaks that we could be looking at. More than 100,000 leaks. They pumped more water than in a hot summer day yesterday in San Antonio, which is interesting. Of course, the lack of pressure. He talked about bill relief, the fact that if you have leaking pipes, you're not going to have to pay the water bill. They will figure out how to do it before the leaks actually occurred.
They're telling a lot of people you're going to pay what you paid last month. So let's say you had a leak in your house. Obviously, you've got water gushing out of a pipe that you're not going to use. SAWS saying you're not going to pay for that. You will pay what you paid last month, or I believe it's or this month's, whichever one is actually lower, the lower of those two options. So a relief plan that they have in place there. Puente also talked about how you're going to see SAWS teams out in neighborhoods. They're actively looking for any of these leaks. I mean, that number alone that you mentioned, 100,000 leaks they're expecting in homes and businesses. And really, it may be in the coming days when we get a better idea of how many people have been impacted by that very problem as things thaw out. And some people are able to return to homes. Maybe they're not there at this point. So he talked a lot about the work that's underway, that pressure, that low water pressure that so many people are experiencing, saying that's the reason for that continued boil notice that they're hoping to get lifted. Yeah, and quickly, the mayor talked on the latest briefing he got from CPS Energy. Significant improvement through the day. We've talked about that. He says the next day or so critically important for stability in the electric grid. They also talked about some other things, and we have Dr. Ruthbergeron coming up later in our KSAT Q&A, and so we'll get into some vaccine and some COVID talks there and just what the health aspects of this power outages and water outages could be for our community. That's coming up a little bit later. But the weather situation, what we really want to get to right now. We're going to take a break. Adam Caskey is going to be on the other side of it with a look at these temperatures going forward. It has snowed all day in San Antonio. Now we want to know, when is this coming to an end? Absolutely.
It's coming to an end within a couple of hours here. It's going to be wrapping up. So by about 9 o'clock, we expect most of the snow to be taken care of. Let's take a look at our radar locally, and already parts of San Antonio have seen a lull in the action, especially around Converse, Garden Ridge, Schertz, Live Oak area, and even Stone Oak seeing a bit of a break. However, you go to the south side of town, west side, and they're still seeing more snow cycle through. And this will continue to move west to east, passing through Bexar County. So even if you have a lull in those locations I mentioned, you'll probably get another quick little hit of snow. I-10 still some persistent snow, but only for a few more hours. You go out west, this is where the sweet spot was in the bullseye for the accumulations. It's done in Del Rio, coming to an end in Brackettville. Uvalde, you'll see it come to an end momentarily. Look at these radar estimates, and these are actually on the low end of what was verified out west near Del Rio. I mean, we're talking 6 to 8 inches right along that Highway 90 corridor, in the vicinity there of Highway 90. Around San Antonio and Bexar County, these are estimates by the radar, not confirmed measurements, but anywhere from about 2 inches on the southeast side of Bexar County to nearly 6 out near Government Canyon and whatnot. Temperature-wise, right now, we're dropping down into the upper 20s, right near 30 degrees. But tomorrow morning, here's what we are expecting. We're expecting upper teens, so just shy of 20 degrees tomorrow. A hard freeze in the morning. So the wet roads that we had today will become icy. A refreeze is likely tonight on those wet roads. Temperature of 25 at midnight, 24 at 3 a.m., 19 to start the day tomorrow at 7 a.m. And then into Saturday morning, we'll have another freeze at 26. And what concerns me about that is we'll also have fog, and that could lead to what we call freezing fog, which is basically like freezing drizzle. It can create a little glaze of ice on area roadways. That's Saturday morning, I'd say up until about 10, 11 a.m. Freezing fog. Yeah, it's fog that will just freeze on contact with any exposed surface and creates ice. This is like a winter variety pack. I know, it's like a winter quiz show. What's next? 64 Sunday. There you go.
Ooh, let's get there. We'll be right back. It has been a very out of the ordinary week in San Antonio, but we are joined now in our KSAT Q&A by someone we are used to seeing on Thursdays, Dr. Ruthbergeron, infectious disease doctor with the Long School of Medicine at UT Health San Antonio. Doctor, thanks for being with us. We all hope you've been safe and warm this week. We know that the coverage of COVID is kind of taken a back seat to this winter crisis that we're all dealing with. But I'm curious what you think the events of the last week could do in terms of impacting the spread of COVID in our community.
So if you reacted to the cold by staying home and huddling with your social bubble, then we got an extra lockdown period that would interrupt the transmission. If you reacted to the cold by going to a crowded indoor place of any kind where there were people unmasked, then that could accelerate it. It all depends on what you did. But I'd like to think that most people probably hunkered down and stayed close to home.
What about the bigger impacts, the bigger health impacts for the community, just from the power outages and just from the lack of water, those kind of things?
Well, we've had an unprecedented number of cancellations for medical visits at our own facility. UT Health had to cancel because we couldn't safely let patients come to clinic. So there's going to be a backlog of people who, weren't maybe getting their prescriptions renewed on time or maybe had difficulty getting to the pharmacy. I personally was taking calls from people and trying to facilitate compromise plans for how to treat medical problems because of what was going on. It takes a toll on everybody. It can be stressful. Elderly, frail people, I think, have found it stressful. Some people just don't want to leave their homes, even when it's cold, because it's so complicated to go somewhere else. So there's a lot of uproar and upset. But, we'll get back on track. This kind of weather isn't going to last forever. And we're going to reschedule appointments, and everybody's going to get the help that they need as soon as we can get to them.
A lot of vaccination appointments have been rescheduled throughout the week, several days in a row. And we're hearing from people who were concerned about that, whether it was their first appointment for that very first dose of the COVID-19, but especially their second. Concerns about that timeline in between the first and second dose being delayed. What's your advice for those folks?
You want to strive for the ideal, but you have grace. You have a grace period. So 21 days is the ideal for Pfizer, 28 days for Moderna. It turns out that you can go up to 42 days between your first and your second dose and still be within a window of what immunologists consider to be acceptable. We don't have a lot of clinical data for that, but based on what we know about immune responses to other vaccines, we do believe that you can safely go out to 42 days between your first and your second dose without compromising your body's immune response to that. So that said, you still want to try to get your vaccine as close to the schedule as you can, but you shouldn't let that add to a lot of stress because you do have this grace period, and that does give everybody a lot of flexibility in scheduling their second dose.
I'd like to open up the floor to you to give you the final say in all of this. And I'm just curious, with COVID not being in the headlines, hopefully people aren't letting their guard down. But what would you like to say to our viewers tonight?
Just keep steady as she goes. We have to not lose track of our focus. And we're still fighting a pandemic. The weather is going to pass, and the pandemic will still be with us. And we're taking the right steps, and we need to continue to do it. Please remember, folks, the virus is mutating, and the more we let it do that, the more problematic it's going to be to get to herd immunity and getting back to normal. So don't lose your focus. Let's stay on our game. Keep up with the mitigation measures, the washing, the wearing the mask, and the distancing, and focus on getting your vaccine. First dose, second dose.
We want this pandemic to come to an end, too, eventually, so we have to keep up all of those things. And I want to remind people, too, that you can go to KSAT.com to find out when those vaccination appointments have been rescheduled. It's been fluctuating a lot this week. So, Dr. Bergeron, thanks so much for your time. As always, again, stay safe, stay warm. Hope you can hold on to power and water. That's something we're all trying to do this week. Take care.
Thank you so much. Y'all stay warm.
Thank you, Doctor. Bye. We'll be right back. A lot of snow in the viewing area today. How long will it be lasting?
A few more hours, and it's already come to an end in Del Rio and Valverde County, where they really were the bullseye of this event out there along Highway 90. I mean, we're talking accumulations just shy of a foot out west. So let's take a look at our weather story here and some of our weather headlines going forward. This evening, the snow coming to an end, and we're a few hours away from that. It's slowly going to taper off, and then we'll actually have a clearing sky. But that clearing sky is going to lead to a cold night tonight. So anticipate a refreeze along the roadways tonight. Thawing out tomorrow. By even the noon hour, we'll be right near 40 with high temperatures into the 40s. Here's my concern Saturday morning. Freezing fog. Well, with all the melt and a little influx of low-level moisture off the Gulf, we'll have fog, but then temperatures will drop below freezing, and some of that fog can freeze on contact with area surfaces and cause slick spots, of course. Del Rio, 9.7 inches, but we saw a few reports outside of Del Rio of higher amounts, even on the order of 10 to 11 inches. Pearsall, about 2 inches reported at the airport in town, officially 2.5. Canyon Lake, about 5.3. Across Bexar County, anywhere from about 1.5 inches to upwards of 5 inches. You take a look at this. This is on the west side of town, I believe, from one of our viewers, about 3.5 inches there. Let me go back to that, about 3.5 inches there. We get up to Helotes, and that looks like about 5 inches. Best thing you can do when you're measuring snow is to take that measurement at about 4 different places around the yard, or 5, and then average those measurements together. This here is what I like. Beautiful snowflakes landing on my jacket. These are those nice dendritic snowflakes I like to talk about, those dendrites. Now, it's broken, as they often do. They collide, they hit each other, a lot of turbulence. Nonetheless, it's pretty neat to see that close-up shot of a dendritic snowflake. All right, let's talk about the radar out there. Here in San Antonio, there's some activity. It's just starting to slowly wind down. I know we're still getting the snow, especially on the west side of town, Leon Springs area, Helotes, south side. It's starting to lighten up a bit, but we're still adding to those snow totals that I was sharing with you. So we're going to continue to tack on a little bit more onto those snow totals. Up I-10 all the way to Kerrville still have the areas of snow. It's starting to end as you go out west of San Antonio. Del Rio area along Highway 90 as well. Brackettville, it's ending. Uvalde, you've got a little bit left. Hondo, you still have a few more hours for that to work its way through. I think by about 9 o'clock, give or take, it should pretty much all be out of here and over with. One issue, though, we're going to face tonight, I mentioned, were the refreeze of the roads, particularly looking at the road temperatures right now. This is an estimate of the road temperatures. It's not actual measurements, but it's an estimate, and it seems to have been proven pretty accurate over the past couple of days. Northern Bexar County, we're talking 1604 northward, roads already at 24 degrees, so the freeze is going to happen quickly. Downtown, road temperatures right around freezing. You get into southern Bexar County, they're at 32, Atascosa County at 38. What's going to happen here is all these road temperatures are going to be cooling off. So the roads may be wet right now, but they will be cooling off, and you'll definitely see that refreeze later on tonight. All right, taking a look at our temperatures. 31 in town, 25 Kerrville, 32 Carrizo Springs. Still, not all reporting sites are giving us info because of communication errors due to these the weather conditions. 30 Stinson, 26 Bandera. Tonight, looks like we'll be dropping down into the upper teens for most of us. So that refreeze on the roadways, that's the issue for tonight and first thing tomorrow morning. Light northwesterly breeze tonight, not much of a wind tomorrow. Sunny, that sun's going to go a long way. Significant improvements on the roads tomorrow during the day with that sun and 40s. That issue Saturday morning with a little bit of light icing, but we'll be in the 50s by the afternoon. And Sunday back into the 60s despite more regular fog and clouds.
Regular fog. Please, we'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Thanks to a generator donated by 2 local companies, power has been restored to the well pump that the San Antonio Zoo used for warm water in its ponds.
Most of its other animals were fine where they were, but on Monday, zoo staff took on the big move, relocating about 100 reptiles, birds, and fish that are vulnerable to this cold.
How'd they do it? Jesse Delgado says very carefully.
Welcome to San Antonio, dawn of a new ice age.
Or seemingly close to it. A pile of snow sparked the curiosity of the wild dogs as they warily approached it. The elephants got together to huddle up against the cold, yet graceful swans still seemed to glide along undisturbed, while the jaguar tried and tried and tried to drag the kisses for kitty bag she got for Valentine's Day into her man-made lair. Certainly not what they're used to. The zebras were taking in their change of scenery. So were the giraffes. Must have been cold up there. But they all got to stay put. Unlike this fellow, the zoo's animal services crew withstood the cold to ever so carefully lift alligators and crocodiles like this one out of their ponds.
Those guys took probably 4 or 5 people at least on each of the crocs.
Here's where they ended up, indoors on the floor in front of the hippo exhibit.
They get to watch the hippos.
The zoo's restaurant may have to be renamed after this.
So yeah, the Riverview restaurant is now the Flamingo Flamingo Haven.
Zoo staff wrapped their arms around each one, walking the flamingos to where they needed to be, indoors. Same for the turtles. They're no longer in their ponds because of this week's widespread power outage. These are some of the zoo staff that at some point will take them back to where they were.
Hopefully it'll start warming up soon and we can get back to normal.
Jesse Degollado, KSAT 12 News.
Hard to fight a fire with a lack of water. We have an update on that apartment fire we told you about at the beginning of this newscast near TPC Parkway and Evans Road. We mentioned that firefighters were having a hard time fighting this one because of problems getting water specifically out of